Welcome to Step Away from the Table, Beyond the Table. The podcast for pet groomers ready to start their next chapter. Let's explore what's possible when you trade in the grooming table for the freedom of virtual work. Whether you're done with the physical toll or just craving more flexibility, you're in the right place. We're staying in the pet industry, just shifting how we show up. So take a breath, step away from the table, and let's see what's waiting for you on the other side.
Hey everyone, they say keep calm and carry on, but when the Wi-Fi is down and your laptop is dying, it's pouring outside. Hey everyone, it is River Lee, and I'm the founder of The Savvy Groomer and Step Away from the Table. And I'm going to welcome you guys here to Beyond the Table. And this is where we're going to talk about life, work, and purpose beyond grooming. So today we're talking about one of those moments where no planner or system can really prevent. We're talking about power outages when you're a virtual assistant or when you're working online, whether there's a winter storm, maybe a neighborhood blackout, or maybe your internet just kind of gave up, right? We've all been there. So joining me today is someone who knows exactly what's that like. This is a friend, a fellow VA, someone I really adore. This is Tiffany Higgins. So Tiffany, please take it away and please share your stories.
Hi, so my name's Tiffany. I was a groomer for about 8 years, owned my business for about six, and I wanted to be a VA because I want a little bit more flexibility in my life. And I just experienced the power going out while working online not too long ago.
I remember it was so funny. It was like not, and there wasn't really a reason. It just was bad luck, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was just a snowstorm and then the power went out, so sometimes it just happens.
Right. And I think, again, like I think you had one of those moments where your laptop was open, your notes were pulled up, coffee in your hand, everything disappears, right? I mean, I think it seems like there's such a sinking feeling when that happens, especially when you're in work mode and everything kind of stops, right?
Exactly. At the time, I didn't have the laptop fully charged. I was using my desktop, so I wasn't
Oh
even thinking about
no.
it. So I was like, yeah, to totally ruin like the workflow, I had to ch switch gears.
I mean, that makes total sense. And I will say, like, maybe that's our first tip for this, right? Is guys, you need a laptop. You need a laptop. Um, if you're one of those people that can work on their phone, great. I need a full keyboard. I've tried to do the iPad thing. I've tried to do the phone with external keyboard. I personally need a laptop. But and then and a power source, right?
Hmm.
Absolutely. And listen, I remember that. I think it's such a great example of how things happen, right? No matter how organized you are, reliable we are, right? Life happens. And sometimes all you can do is stay calm and communicate. Because even if you had a laptop, you were out for quite a bit of time, right? So you
Yeah.
would have died anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like even if I had charged, it would have lasted however long the battery lasts, and then.
What are you gonna do?
Hmm. So yeah, it's really easy to just panic or feel guilty but when something's out of your control, like just realize that power outages happen. Just do the best you can, plan as much as you can if you know there's going to be bad weather, and just respond back with some flexibility and have systems in place to keep moving forward.
I think that's such great advice. And again, I want that to be really what today's episode is really about, right? Not preventing like we can prevent every crisis, right? Of course, be organized, all that, but it's really about how do you prepare in the sense of how do you communicate and how do you handle when there's things outside of your control.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So when I see a storm warning now, I'll like charge the laptop, charge like my little power thing, make sure my phone is charged, and then I have a personal hotspot, so that helps with the internet at least. It's not the best, but it's something.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that it's not if it's going to happen, it's when. And I love that you want to dive right into the preparation because power outages are one of those things, again, that we can't control, we can't plan around.
Hmm.
And it's such a great point, again, like where you brought up these other things, right? It's not just the power and the laptop, it's also the internet, right? Because again, that's something I always forget when we lose power here because, you just assume the internet's going to be here. And as somebody who grew up with a landline, like I remember we always had a corded phone and a cordless because when the power died, you didn't have a wireless phone anymore.
Hmm.
And again, sometimes technically the power's on, but the Wi-Fi is gone, right? Or the Wi-Fi isn't reliable, where it drops in and out. And then you're just sitting watching that loading screen effortlessly, right? Because I think, like for me, I can pull it up on my cell phone. I don't have great reception there. So, I'm sitting there watching my phone trying to like connect to the internet and I'm just like shaking it angrily, right?
I know, right? And you can do things ahead of time, like scheduling your posts and all that when you know bad weather's coming. Like if you just usually post in the morning certain days, just like be like, oh, winter storm's coming this week. Like I'll just like pre-do what I can. That way it's a little more flexible when the time comes.
I think that's really smart. And again, I think we forget how dependent we are on things like cloud tools, right? Like Google Drive or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
Um, I know for me, like when I'm traveling internationally, I really struggle because for better or for worse, if I don't have reliable internet in either a third world country, or on the cruise ship, or sometimes it's just bad luck. Suddenly all those tools are gone or they take forever to load. Like, I don't know about you, but when I have low internet, Canva is my kryptonite because all of those graphics and everything, they don't load. You just take out all this stuff for granted.
You really do, because when you're used to having like a gig internet and then it drops down like to 100 megabytes a second, you're like, oh my God, this is so different. Like I can't even upload this post in 1 minute.
It was a real interesting experience for me, and I'm glad I got it because, like you said, I'm used to a gig when I'm home. And then don't laugh. But so when I'm on the cruise ship sometimes, especially when we're like in Asia or like in French Polynesia, three, 3 to 10. That's how fast the internet was going. You can't load an email in less than like 5 to 10 minutes. Never mind a picture. Like it was so funny because a couple of my circle students for the Savvy Groomer Circle had sent me voice notes and I just texted them back like, listen, it's going to take an hour to download. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it just is what it is. But
Hmm.
again, I think that's another great tip because I think we sometimes underestimate how those small proactive tips and steps are going to save our sanity later, right? And again,
Exactly.
it's not like we want to lose power. It's not like we want to have these issues, but they're a reality. And you're going to be more relaxed if you have thought through them.
Exactly. And then another thing that I've noticed is good to have, like prep as much as you can, like you can't predict everything. Just communicate when things do go wrong, like with like your clients, your supervisor, whoever. That way they know what's going on and you can play it by ear.
Well, I think that's important, right? Because Um, I think it's one of those things that we take for granted when we're virtual assistants because again, when we had our own grooming businesses, like, if the power goes out, the whole business shuts down, right? But you
Hmm.
can see that, right? Versus if you're home, right? It is kind of confusing where someone's like messaging me like, "Hey, I can't do this." You're like, "But if you can't do this, why not?" Also, some of our supervisors, and for those of you guys that are not familiar with our podcast, we call supervisors, I'm sorry, supervisors are our grooming business owners, and we call them supervisors for sanity's sake because if we say owners, is it the dog owner? Is it the grooming salon owner? I mean, we don't say clients because is it the pet grooming client? Is it the supervisor? Like it's chaotic. So we just simplified it and call them a supervisor. But again, I think too, a lot of people that are not full-time VAs or maybe don't do a lot of the back end. I think a lot of groomers don't do the back end necessarily, um, or don't do a lot of it. They don't really understand what we're doing. So I think it's really great that you bring up being graceful and being kind and being patient with your supervisor, right? I think that's really important.
Definitely. Um, like when I before when things were out of my control, I used to apologize a lot. And like, yes, you can
Mm.
still apologize, but like get out of that habit of being like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like it's not your fault. Life happens, just as long as you're communicating that and working through it. like that's what you want to do. And it'll help your anxiety too.
No, that makes sense. I mean, so like for an example, like what is like a simple message you might send in that instance? Like what's something that you would send to your clients? I should say again, your supervisor. This is why we have to be clear. What would you
Supervisors,
send your supervisor?
like for example, I let's say I didn't have enough internet and the power went out and I needed to send like reminder text for pet owner clients coming in for the supervisor's business the next day. I'd be like to the supervisor, hey, my power just went out. I don't think I have enough power left to text all these clients. Like, let's make a plan for maybe you to go through the client list and text them yourself since I don't know exactly when power's coming back on.
And I think that's very fair. And again, I think that's another situation where when you're creating those expectations with your supervisor, you should have, because again, you don't know what's going to happen for better, for worse. I mean, you know, we live in the real world, right? There could be natural disasters, there could be
Hmm.
power outages, there could be all kinds of different things. And going back to you apologizing, right?
Hmm.
I think so many people apologize like 20 times and they over explain. And again, staying calm, and your client is going to, I should say, your supervisor is going to mirror that. I don't know if you've ever seen, have you seen the movie A Simple Favor before?
No.
It's not super relevant, but there's this where Blake Lively, she says, women apologize all the time, and it's an effed up female habit. And I think that's the truth, right? I think apologizing is something that we do as a defense mechanism more so than we're actually doing it because we genuinely feel sorry. It's more like we don't want you to dislike us, so we're going to apologize. And I think that's very different than I've wronged you, and here's why I'm apologizing. You have no reason to be sorry for something that is completely out of your control. I mean, yes, I still think you're responsible, but there's only so much you can do. Um, and it is good for you to have a contingency plan with your supervisor about, hey, if you live in a tornado area, what am I going to do with that? If there's, here it's mostly like snow, power outages, um, like that's about it, I would say, really. I mean, sometimes hurricanes, but once every 5, 6 years. But if you live in, let's say, Florida,
Mm.
right? You may have to evacuate and you may be gone for a week. And I think you need to have an adult conversation of like, hey, I live in this area. These things are incredibly rare. But if they do happen, we need to be able to quickly hand these things off. And as a quick aside, I do think that's where, again, we teach you guys in the VA Foundation fundamentals, we tell you guys to know what you have to do. And we suggest that you have all of that stuff under, I like Google Drive. So in a perfect world, you'd have each individual supervisor has their own Google Drive because then I can say to them, hey, here is your Google Drive. Everything is here, everything is organized, right? Your email is not commingled. They have their own Gmail so they can log in and immediately step into all that. All of the logins for their Canva, everything is under their specific thing, right? Because if you've commingled and their stuff in Canva, and for those of you guys that don't know what Canva is how we often create graphics, slide decks. You might for social media stuff. If for instance, let's say Tiffany, if you had 5 or 6 of your clients under, I should say supervisors, but 5 or 6 of your supervisors stuff under Canva, you can't give them that stuff,
Hmm.
right? And it's one of those things like, yes, you can do that with permissions, yes, you can do that, but most of us are not that disciplined, right? Most of us are not every single time like, okay, let me add this person. You're going to accidentally add the wrong person or you're going to be doing something versus when I log in, I'm working on just this supervisor stuff. And then if I have to quit or if there's an emergency and I'm like, listen, I can't finish this much social media, I'm going to send you this. You can do as you please, right? It's an emergency. So.
Hmm.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I know that, and I don't think too it matters if you have just 1 or 2 supervisors. I think that for sanity's sake, it is the best idea. That said, I know not everyone's going to do that. So
I think that's the best idea too, just to have their own Canva account, their own Google account. That way you're not trying to remember where like some supervisor's stuff is. Like you know what's in their account and it's not mixed into your personal one.
absolutely. And I think, again, for you, when you had that power outage, it was such a great lesson, right? And from,
Hmm.
the business owner side, the supervisor side, what we need most, like you said, is communication, right? Not perfection. They need to understand what's going on because whether your supervisor lives in like we live in very similar areas, but like when I'm in Australia or I'm in wherever, like I'm going to go to Florida, I may not know what you're going through. If I live in California, we may be having wildfires, right? There's so many things that can be that. And I think without communicating that, and that may even being super proactive and saying, hey, you know, supervisor, just so you know, we're coming into wildfire season in California from this time to this time. I will need to be able, just so and you can even have a code word. You can even use the word, for this example, wildfire. Say, hey, if I send you 911 wildfire, please know I need to drop everything. Here is the link to everything. And I need to evacuate my home. And I don't know what kind of internet or anything I'm going to have, right? I, you know, Mary Quendo teaches a really great class on emergency preparedness. If you guys haven't already, check it out. It's built more towards grooming salons, but you can always learn more things for it. And I think that everyone needs to be prepared for these emergencies, but that's complicated. So I don't want to go too far down the emergency preparedness side, but just more so communicating with your supervisor and everything. And, again, it is really difficult when you can't access everything that you're used to accessing.
It is. When I didn't have power, I kind of had to switch gears because I wasn't as prepared as I learned to be. So, but you can always grab a notebook and do things that are like creative work that you might have to do for your supervisor and write down your ideas and stuff like that. That way you're still being productive in like your work time. Well, you can't do what you actually wanted to do for the day.
That's a great idea too. And I do think a lot of times we forget, obviously, about pen and paper, which sounds silly, right? We should remember we have those things. But again, I think that's a really wise point that even just writing down, like, okay, like, what do I need to get done the rest of this week? Where can I allocate that? Like, maybe if you have someone you can go to, like, if you live close to friends or family, and again, we're not talking like a few hours, like, if you're going to have no power for like a week, where can you go? Um, and I am not a tax professional, do not blah, 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 blah. But there's also, it might be worthwhile to find out if you rent a hotel room, can you write that off? Because obviously you need the internet and you need power in order to work. So, and don't forget too, like, you always have the option when this happens of if it's just your house, which sometimes it's just your street, right? Don't forget there's resources like Starbucks have, not great internet, but some internet, different co-working spaces, hotel lobbies, not all of them, but like Marriott's a really nice one because as long as you're a Marriott member, you can use the internet for free. There's a lot of times I've done that where I've gone into a Marriott lobby and just in a country and just used it. I think Starbucks is better because at least then you can get coffee. Some McDonald's have internet, not all of them. So you can always go in, see if there's Wi-Fi, if there's not. That's also a way to plug in your laptop if you have a laptop, charge your phone. If they have cords, Starbucks generally do, McDonald's generally don't. Um, you know, I also think too, thinking about it really quickly, um, if you have, depending upon what kind of car you have, so my car, I can actually get a plug. So I can plug in a plug in my back seat. So again, you can always go for a drive and charge your laptop, especially if you have to drive, let's say, depending on it. Like in the summer, I don't know about you, Tiffany, but like in the summer, if I have a fridge full of food and it's going to be a few days, like I'm like, who can I drop my food? Like I am not losing a fridge and a freezer full of food.
Exactly, because you're right. You can buy the little thing that's like the 12-volt like change thing, and then just
Mhm.
drive it to wherever whoever has room and store your food there to leave power.
Right. And so you're killing two birds with one stone, right? Because you can plug your phone in. You guys all know you can do that. And while you're driving. So, I mean, just little things to think about. And I think that's it, right?
hmm
But bringing it back to your, to your supervisors, right? I think a lot of it comes down to also having boundaries. What do you think?
I think so too, because it's good to still like have boundaries and follow them, even if things are a little out of whack. Like just follow them to the best of your ability while you're still kind of like doing the best you can.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? I think sometimes we forget in the digital age that we don't have access to everyone all the time. I personally don't mind when people message me. I'm the kind of person, if I don't message you now, I'm going to forget. So I don't mind when people do that. As long as they don't expect me to give them an answer now. I think that's the hardest thing for me personally.
I agree. I'm the type of person too where if I don't message you, I might forget later that I wanted to ask you something and then it's just like lost forever. So, but you
Yeah.
shouldn't expect people to answer you immediately. And like I think a lot of people in this day and age, especially younger people, no offense, they think like they have just like your like attention all the time.
Well, I think too, like I was telling my son, and he's 14 turning 15. Um, I think it's really hard because like he had at our house we had a regular phone with a voicemail before he got a cell phone. So he had that experience. But most people don't. Like, think about it. Like, they really don't. And so for me, like on a cruise ship, I really like it because they have to call my room and leave a voicemail. And then when I get back to my room, I check my voicemail and like it's a much nicer way of living versus like constantly being connected. But at the same time, I think it's created this unhealthy attachment. And, again, these are why boundaries are so important with your supervisor. And I'll be honest, if you're in a true emergency and I mean, your supervisor may not, you also need to communicate how dire this is, right? You can't assume they know. Um, I remember the first time a good friend of mine. So long story short, they're from Flagstaff, Arizona, and they get a lot of snow. They get a lot of snow, but they had never driven in New England snow. And they were very, very confident. And we got a really nasty snowstorm. I mean, it snowed like 3, 4 feet in a few hours. Like it was bad. Like all the cars were covered. Like the roads were shut down for a week. And we got like a total of 5 feet, I think. And long story short, they were very confident. They were like, "Oh yeah," da, da, and they're like, "I don't understand why this snow because it was icy. Like they're used to like powdery snow, and not only is the snow here get icy, there's more rockiness, there's more graveliness. So not only does the ice suck more, but then like if you fall in the snow, you're gonna hit rocks more. Like it was really funny. They're like, "This sucks." I'm like, "I'm aware." And on the flip side, I remember when I was in Bali and there was flooding. Now we have flooding here, right? But this flooding was, I was scared. Like, this was not like, this sucks. Like, I mean, we've had flooding here where like cars get stuck. We've had flooding where, you can't walk in the street. Your cars are going to get damaged. Cars get all the way flooded. This was the flooding I had when I was in Bali was you were afraid you were going to drown. You were afraid, like in the streets, there became rivers. Um, the level of danger had never really hit. And I think sometimes, like I can try to imagine what it feels like to have wildfires or like the hurricane situation like they have in Florida. I can't. One last story, and then Tiffany, I'd love to hear more of your thoughts. But A mutual friend of ours, Andrea, used to live in Florida. And I remember we had a hurricane warning. And again, a hurricane up here is like, meh. I mean, it's not good, but and she was freaking out. She had a go bag. She called me. She's like, we gotta go. And I'm like, go. And she's like, I've boarded my windows. Like, I'm go. Like, she was like, where's your bag? Like, we're leaving. And I was like, girl, like, I'm gonna get some candles. I'm gonna get me some cards to play by, like cards and board games. I'm gonna get some but no, like she had like a bathtub full of water. She had all these things. And again, it's because that means something so different. I feel like if I had been in Florida, I would have been completely unprepared. So, just some quick stories because again, you as a VA need to understand your supervisor if they have issues like that. But on the flip side, right? I mean, ultimately, your supervisor may not understand the depth of what's happening to you, right? And those are more extreme examples, but that's why you might be losing power, right?
Hmm. That's very true because yeah, a hurricane in Florida is very different than a hurricane like inland of like New England or something because it's not as extreme. So like these people might have different ways of preparing and like their level of like fear, you know what I mean? Like so we all have to handle that in different ways.
Now, I remember at one point you had mentioned that you have what you call a calm plan. Can you tell me what's on your calm plan, like when you're, thinking about that and all that? Because I know you've said that before.
Yeah. So for me it's really simple. I like to just like do some slow breathing, like really mindful breathing, maybe like light a vanilla candle because they're my favorite. Get me just
Yum.
feeling a little bit more grounded. And if I was already too overwhelmed to like send the supervisor a message, then I will send the message after I've calmed down a little bit. And then maybe I'll do like a small task if I have light, like if it's still daylight. Maybe I'll like go put some dishes away that are already clean or like fold the bathroom towels or something just like to get my mind off the situation.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, and I don't think it's silly at all that like you're doing these things, right? I think it's actually really good. And I think too, I think it's easy to get overwhelmed in those situations because you might feel like especially if you have like deadlines or things or and it's the frustration of feeling like something is completely out of your control, right? And I think that's a piece that a lot of people skip when they're talking about their communication with their supervisor, right? Because it's not just what you say, it's also the energy and the intentionality behind it.
Exactly. Kind of like how we were talking about how you can mirror somebody's like emotional level earlier if you're like calm. The supervisor will probably feel calm too. Whereas if you're like anxious and panicked and all over the place, like that's not gonna go well.
Yeah, and I think that is a balance, right? Where it's like I don't want to be panicked, but I also don't want to downplay what's happening to me. Like we don't want to be like, you're fine. Like, but we're not, right?
Hmm.
But I think it's beautifully said. So let's say power's back on and the router's on and you don't have the death spiral on your phone or whatever. I mean,
Hmm.
so what's the first thing that you would do or you would suggest other VAs to do once everything's up and running?
So kind of like how you would start your normal workday, like once it's all everything's back on, all power, kind of like grab your coffee, get your workstation all set up, and then like open your email or like your little task list or your planner, and then just like go from there. Whatever didn't get done, roll over into today, and then make your priorities of what you want to get done first.
No, I think that's good because, you know, I think I think you need to be like calm, you need to set the tone. Again, these are things outside your control, but they're not horrible, right?
Mhm. Exactly. And kind of like I was saying, like roll over what you didn't get done. It's kind of like a triage check because anything that was like
Hmm.
urgent, like that'll want to be like your top priority, even though you might have already had your day planned before that like unexpected power outage happened.
So I love the word triage because I think that's really what it is, right? Yeah, and it really depends if you had like power outages for like a few hours or if it was like a few days, right? Now you've got to like figure out what is important, what's not important, and there's no way for you to do everything at once, right? Because especially if it's been like a day or two, everything's kind of rolled over, right? And you really do need to then reevaluate where your priorities are to figure out what really matters first, right?
Exactly. And then it's good once you're like all ready for work mode to let each of your supervisors know, like, hey, the power's back on, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm good to go again.
And I love that because for me, like as a business owner, the last thing I want is radio silence, right? Like I would much rather have I don't want to say the word accountability, but like again, like that communication. Because obviously, as a supervisor, I understand that things are outside this person's control, but by having that, like, hey, this is what's happening, I can give you an update, and then getting hopefully periodic updates of like, hey, it's been 12 hours, we don't have power. If there's no power by tomorrow at noon, I'm gonna do X, Y, Z. I do think that makes my job much, much easier. And I think it gives me, again, like I don't want to say accountability, but it just makes me feel like they're feeling responsible in a positive way, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then after you do your little triage check, you can be like, how did I prepare well and like what could be better for next time? Kind of like how I learned, like, yeah, I really need a laptop and I really need that power bank. You'll learn what like didn't go well.
Well, and I think that's what's unfortunate, right? You don't know what you don't know, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, it's such a healthy way for you to look at it. Instead of like beating yourself up or like being mean, you're just doing like a systems check, basically, right? And for some people, it might be good to invest in like a generator. Like I'm not going to invest in a generator here. I don't own this property. But if I did own it, I think it's something that I would want, um, for like my fridge or my internet, and maybe a few outlets or like part of the house. And again, it really depends upon how often you lose power and what your job is. If you guys are really making bank, some of the VAs are making, well into, 10, 20, $30,000 a month. Not most, let's be clear, not most, but especially your agency owners are doing stuff like that. So for them, it's definitely worth investing in that. And again, that's something they could look into taxes if that would be covered. So, and I think that's it. Each time you're gonna get better, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's never going to be perfect, but each time you'll find a little thing that you can improve upon, and then it'll just be better for next time.
I love that. I love that so much. I think that's just it, right? Like, practice makes perfect. And unfortunately, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. So I think it gets easier.
Exactly. And then you'll become naturally, like, because you've gone through it and it's not your first rodeo.
I think that's it's a beautiful note to end, transition. And let's talk about like the big takeaways for anyone who wants to build, let's say, calm and confident, even when things like happen, like when the flip switches and the lights are off, right? So, you know, I think what I love most about this conversation is it's not about just the power outages, it's about the realities of things outside of our control and how to have more grace under pressure when things are completely out of our control, right?
Exactly, because no matter how organized or prepared we are, unexpected things like always happen. And it's not, you can't control anything, but it's how you respond to what happens.
I mean, that's it, right? I mean, it is what it is. It's so easy for us to think like, oh, I failed, or I should have done this, or I should have been ready for that, right? And the truth is, you know what? Ultimately, you handled it. Even if you didn't handle it the most beautifully, right? You communicated, you adapted, and you kept your cool. I think the only bad thing that could happen is if you completely ghosted and ignored your supervisor. I think that's the only bad outcome that could happen. But again, like you didn't, and that's what professionalism looks like, right? I think that's the such an important thing if you're going to be a virtual assistant, especially for the pet industry where people are relying on you.
Exactly. And like every time this happens, like I said, it'll just build your confidence and you'll be like, okay, I can handle this. And like, I got this.
I love that, but anyway, I love that so much, it's such an empowering mindset, and I really think the way you put that really does turn chaos into confidence.
I think so too. And I think this will help build some confidence so that VAs can start building their foundation of like how they're going to run their business, how they're going to prepare for things. And yeah, I think that was a really good conversation about power outages and emergencies.
Yay. Well, beautifully said. And thank you so much for joining me, Tiffany. I love when we get real virtual assistants for the pet industry on the podcast, because then we get to talk to you guys about real world things and how you deal with things, right? And sometimes we go a little bit off topic, but it ultimately always comes back, right? It's a fun conversation.
Exactly. There's always going to be a side because like it's real life, so it happens.
Ugh, isn't it true? Well, everyone, thank you guys so much. And remember, it's not about avoiding chaos, it's about staying calm in the thick of it. Okay. So, guys, this has been Step Away from the Table, Beyond the Table. I'm your host, River Lee.
I'm Tiffany Higgins.
And, guys, we will see you next time. Thanks for joining me on Step Away from the Table, Beyond the Table. If today's episode sparked something in you, don't forget to follow, share, or leave a review. It helps more groomers like you find their next step. You don't have to do this alone, but you get to do it your way. Until next time, take a deep breath and keep moving forward.